Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Devana Robity. I'm the program director at the Schweinfurth Art Center, and I'm a member of the SDA Events Committee. SDA is a membership not-for-profit focused on contemporary fiber and textile art, and I'm also a fiber artist. I'm delighted to welcome you to this week's Textile Talk, Learn Plus Make with SDA. Textile Talk webinars are brought to you by the International Quilt Museum, Quilt Alliance, Studio Art Quilt Associates, and the Surface Design Association. So first is our few housekeeping announcements. This is a webinar, so your screens and mics are not showing. We welcome questions, which we'll answer at the end of all of the artist presentations. Please submit them in the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen. We're honored to bring you free and inspiring textile talks and programming, and we ask that you be courteous when you're engaging with our speakers and moderators and other participants. Your chat comments can be seen by everyone. Please use the Q&A for questions and the chat box for greeting others and the survey for commentary or ways that we can improve. If you prefer not to see notifications from the chat, you can click on the chat button to toggle them on or off. And here's a few comments about our SDA workshop series. From basketry to natural pigments and from recycled materials to the latest technologies, the Surface Design Association is proud to present our 2024 online workshop series, which starts February 2024. Today, we're going to get a sneak peek at our instructors, their workshop plans, and learn a little bit more about their practice. Each of these instructors are nationally known. They apply fiber and textile techniques in innovative and exciting ways. Our instructors include Victoria Manganiello, Natalya Khorover, Hannah O'Hare Bennett, Raquel Busa, and Serita Westr. This workshop format spans Saturday to Saturday with 2-hour instruction sessions on the weekends. And there's a midweek meetup to troubleshoot, share progress, gather in community with other participants. The instructors will be present in all the workshops, and it makes it a great way to get to know the instructors and your other participants. All of the workshop recordings will be available to participants for revisiting until the end of 2024. Registration is limited and the sessions are small. And since the workshop series takes place over a 3-month span, you can take several workshops together, and there's a reduced rate if you're interested in that. SDA workshop series are open to members and non-members. You can register with a 10% discount through December 15th using this coupon code, Textile Talk, all caps. More details are available on the SDA website. So let's get on to our first presenter, Victoria Manganiello. Victoria is a textile artist, historian, and educator. Her work has been featured in Hyperallergic, the New York Times, Bulletin Art Info, Forbes, Architectural Digest, among many others. She explores the intersections between materiality, technology, geography, and storytelling. Victoria's multidisciplinary and installation work, abstract paintings, and kinetic sculptures are meticulously made with hand-woven textiles using hand-spun yarn, hand-mixed natural and synthetic colored dyes, alongside mechanical alternatives and modern technologies. Welcome, Victoria.
Thank you for that lovely introduction, and I feel really honored to be alongside the other incredibly talented artists and educators that you have assembled for this series. I'm looking forward to sharing more about my work and about the workshop that I'll be teaching, and certainly invite everyone, if you're curious to learn more about me, to click on some of those links on my website and social media channels. So I identify sort of in 3 different buckets. I think of myself as an educator, as an artist, and as a designer. And in a way, those things are all really blended for me, and my practice blends all things. In my day job, so to speak, I'm an adjunct professor at the in the MFA Textiles department at Parsons, as well as in the studio art department at NYU. And I run a design studio where I incorporate soft materials with all kinds of contexts. For example, I'm currently making a documentary film about machine knitting within the context of my studio, as well as creating large scale interactive installations for different kinds of clients. But on the other end, I'm also an artist in my own right and create objects like the ones you see pictured here as part of my own expression and my own path and exploration with materiality and the stories that I find in these materials. Something I love so much about working with textiles and soft materials is the kinship that it brings with other makers in these materials. You know, none of us has certainly invented any of these techniques, but we can still carve out our own little approach to play with things like weaving and dyes and everything else, all within this wonderful context and history of so many cultures and people throughout time that have worked with these things. Thematically, I'm really interested in exploring the ways that textiles and technology intersect, and I seek to look at ancient forms of technology as a way of exploring current and future forms of technology. So weaving, of course, the weaving loom, when it was sort of first being used, one might have identified it as a technology in that it was a tool that allowed us to create something. But fast forward into history, the first automated task production tool was a loom. We give credit to someone named Joseph Marie Jacquard, who invented, or is credited in inventing, a loom that was automated, and eventually that led to the modern day computers that we're all communicating with now. And finding inspiration that has led me to explore incorporating electronics into my weaving. So you can see the image on the right here is sort of an edited, you can see that's me interacting with a touch screen and a microphone. And then on the right is a detail of a larger installation that's been woven with optical fibers and engages directly with the content a viewer can give into the microphone. So that's just one example of the projects that I have done that incorporate textiles and modern technologies. And that will be the focus of my workshop as well. So the Weaving Circuits workshop is going to be sort of focused on the basics of both weaving and circuitry, and I'd invite anyone who has no experience with either to join us. I think you can probably learn something if you're an expert weaver, but you've never done circuitry, and vice versa. So hopefully it'll bring an interesting group of students. The materials that we'll be working with are electrical components, but ones that have been designed for soft material application. So instead of using wires, we'll use conductive threads. Materials like silver or copper can actually pass electricity through them, and when spun into a thread or a yarn-like form, we can weave with them. We'll also work with sewable LEDs, sewable battery holders, and other things. And I'm really looking forward to sharing the basics with that with you all, but I believe that it would be just a launching point if you're curious about how electronics and textiles merge. This workshop could be a starting point to a whole world of exploration in what we call e-textiles. So I hope you'll join me.
Thank you, Victoria. Okay, our next presenter is Natalya Khorover. Natalya's art is an extension of her commitment to using recycled and repurposed materials, a lifelong advocacy. Her detailed works are nuanced and reimagined images inspired by the lines of urban environment. A close examination of Natalya's art reveals delightful and unexpected combinations of materials as diverse as vintage lace, plastic sheeting, candy wrappers, layered and collaged with machine stitching and hand stitching. Her work has been exhibited and published throughout the United States, including the Dairy Barn, the Schweinfurth Art Center, the Surface Design Journal, and the Sakwa Journal. Welcome, Natalia.
Thank you so much, Devana. I am delighted to be here once again participating with the SDA. Such wonderful, diverse programming. I'm very, very happy to be invited back again. So my background quickly has started back in New York City in the fashion industry. That was my first career. There's been many. I worked with mass market and as a designer and an assistant designer and a fashion coordinator. And then I moved on to film and television, where I was a costume designer and a wardrobe supervisor in film and TV. And the pipes just started in this building. I hope you can't hear them. I have moved on to being a full-time artist pretty much in time with 9/11. I had 2 small kids at home, and I needed to keep doing something with my hands. So stitching and sewing were the way for me to work with my art right away. And it was something that I could do during nap time, for instance. You know, you can stitch something and put it down and move on with the day and then get back to it a little bit later. And when my daughters were little, as you may imagine, there was a lot of laundry involved. So dryer sheets were always involved. And almost right away, as I was doing all these loads of laundry, I started saving these dryer sheets because there was just something so appealing about them. They were soft, they were translucent, some of them were hairy, some of them were smooth, and there was just so much texture to it. And, you know, as a textile person, texture was always my first love. That's why we do what we do, right? We love to touch it. So I started saving these dryer sheets. I think for a while I saved them not knowing what I would do with them. And then I discovered that you can paint on them with textile paints, with acrylic paints, with inks, with many, many things. You can print on them with stencils or digitally even. And then of course they can be stitched by machine or by hand, and they are super, super pliable, and they're wonderful to work with. You can combine them with fabric, you can combine them with paper, you can combine them with plastic, you can do so many things to them. So that's what I started doing as soon as my kids were taking a nap, and I have continued doing until now. I work with many things like vintage textiles, with plastic. That seems to be lately what I've been known for, is working with plastic, but plastic works with many things. And plastic, just like dryer sheets, are a fossil fuel product. I remember trying to figure out what dryer sheets were made from, and they're, well, it's a proprietary thing, but basically they're some kind of a sprayed web of fibers that are essentially plastic. And plastic is a problem on our planet. It's there's a problem of plastic pollution. It's helping climate change advance upon us. So I figure by using materials which would otherwise be in a landfill, they're completely non-recyclable, we're doing a little something good for our planet by using them in our art practice. So I hope that you will join me in my workshop and learn of all the things that you can do with dryer sheets. We'll be painting, we'll be printing, we'll be stitching. And I look forward to seeing how many dryer sheets you can all collect. And by the way, if you no longer use dryer sheets in your own home, which I actually don't do anymore, call around. I'm going to bet that plenty of your friends and neighbors still use them. But please don't go and buy a fresh box just for the workshop, because really this needs to be a washed and used dryer sheet. So actually, even after you use them, throw them into your laundry with a old towel or something, just to get them nice and soft and get all the chemicals that have the scent to them out of them. It'll be much more pleasant to use in your art.
Hey, thank you so much, Natalia. All right, next we have Hannah O'Hare Bennett. Hannah is an artist, paper maker, educator. She holds an MFA in design studies with a focus on textiles and paper from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. With a background in printmaking, Bennett's organic mixed media works may be encountered as weavings, collages, or sculptures. All reflect a creative curiosity that honors the natural world through her textures and palettes and materials.
All right. Hi, everyone. And I'm really flattered to be included in this group and to have the opportunity to give a workshop through these fine organizations. So I guess I'm probably, well, maybe I'll just start by talking about my background. So I've been a practicing artist for about a decade now. Before that, I worked in sustainable agriculture and in produce retail. And then I had an opportunity to come to the University of Wisconsin. And my intention was to study natural dyes and have that be my main focus. And then I came here and I ended up becoming a paper maker. And that probably is what I'm the best known for. But I also work in textiles still, and I use a lot of natural pigments, which is what my workshop will be about. So just to talk about my work a little bit, it has a lot to do with place and the things that exist in particular places. And it's especially tied to where I grew up, typically. So I am from Kansas, from rural Kansas. I grew up on a little organic farm. I was raised by back to the landers. And we heated our house with Osage orange wood. And when I was in my 30s, I discovered that you could extract a dye from that wood that was this beautiful gold color. And then a couple of years ago, I discovered that I could turn that into a pigment, and now I integrate that into my paperwork. And so I'm using a material I'm tying the material that's from a place into the work that I'm making. So the other work that you see here is called Recede. I'm kind of a magpie. I like to collect things. And this is an installation of both found objects that I have collected from, some of it is from Kansas and some of it is from other places that I've been, rural Maine, a dry lake in Oregon, typically places that have been abandoned. And then I combine those with things that I've made. And maybe I'm trying to give, I do this intuitively, but maybe I'm trying to give like an importance to things that have been left behind by combining them with things that I spend a lot of time making. Or maybe it's a kind of trick. I'm not really sure, but intuitively it feels right to me. So in my workshop, we're going to be focusing on technical skills with pigments. So that's where the ground up is in the title of my workshop is, it refers both to like the place, the ground where things come from, and then also the pigments that we use are physically ground up. And so I started working with, I ordered a set of earth pigments, which are mineral pigments, when I was in graduate school about 7 years ago. And I used them off and on a little bit. And then during the pandemic, I had a lot of time to work and by myself. Like I lived by myself, and I just needed to do things with my hands. And so I got my pigments out and I started experimenting with old work. And I found that you can change and add new meaning to older work or even new work too, by layering pigments. So in the workshop, we'll be working with both the mineral pigments, and I'm also going to show how to extract lake pigments from natural dyes. And so we'll learn how to use soy milk to apply those pigments to fabric. I also really want to talk about how the participants can use this method in their own work. I think a lot of times we go to workshops and we learn techniques, but then there's sort of a disconnect between like how you will use this new skill in work that you perhaps are currently making or plan to make. So I'm hoping that people will bring questions to the workshop. Okay, so I'm looking forward to working with all of you and hearing what you are hoping to do with your future work.
All right, thank you, Hannah. Okay, next we have Raquel Busa. Queer Latinx illustrator Raquel Busa strives to create work representing BIPOC and LGBTQ families. She has illustrated and published 3 coloring books, including LGBTQIA+ for kids. In 2020, Raquel completed her master's degree in business management and leadership. That same year, she published Makina 37 LLC. She established Makina 37 LLC, an illustration studio and an online shop. Her most popular services are private virtual classes and custom illustrations. Her style is playful, nostalgic, and lighthearted. She works in collage, sewing, embroidery, and other traditional and digital media. Thank you, Raquel.
Hi, thanks. Thank you for that introduction. Most of the work I do as an illustrator is mainly done on the page, but I also use the iPad in my work. But my love of fabric and textiles I got from my mom, so I wanted to start with just talking about her for a minute. She immigrated to the United States from Dominican Republic and worked in factories as a seamstress to support our family. And I remember visiting her at a tie factory when I was a child and just being mesmerized by all the machines, the sewing machines, the presses, the cutting machines, just all of it. And each person was working in unison with all these machines to make just like one part of the tie. So my mom's job was actually to sew on the labels. And in a matter of hours, this factory could make thousands and thousands of ties. So as an adult, after my mom raised all 7 of us, I'm the youngest of 7, she gave me her sewing machine. It's a vintage sewing machine from 1937, which I still use. And it reminds me of her courage, her resilience, her creativity. And I thought it would be the perfect name for my business, which is Makina 37. So through Makina 37, I offer custom illustration services, and I also teach. So I create these illustrations for my clients, but I also sell designs on products directly to my customers on my website, and I also sell wholesale. And I sell repeating patterns on print-on-demand websites like Spoonflower. So this year, I will teach a workshop on creating repeating patterns on your iPad using the application Procreate. Procreate is a professional grade design application. It's the design application that I love to use most often. It's like Illustrator and Photoshop, but it's very user-friendly and intuitive. So last year when I taught my workshop with SDA, I introduced beginners to the application and showed them how to take designs from their sketchbook and create patterns with them. So this year, I'm going to be teaching similar techniques and going a little bit further. So I'll teach students how to create files in such a way that they can make changes to them more easily in the future. So in other words, how to use layers more wisely. So like, what if you would like to create the same pattern using different colors? Or what if you want to move a motif around or add texture? I'm going to show you how to create pattern blocks. The same way I create pattern blocks for my client, I'm going to show you how to do it that way. So if anyone ever asks you for any changes, you can easily do those changes without recreating your entire work. So you can take this course if you are a beginner using Procreate. There are some features of the application that I'd like you to review before the class, but you can find out what those features are in the course description. I teach everything step by step, so I don't want anybody to get discouraged. I tell my students to review the recordings of the workshop and practice every step. So just play, try out the step, pause the recording, rewind if you need to, and just repeat that process until the actions become second nature. And lastly, I want to reassure everyone that I don't want anyone to replace their art supplies with an iPad. This is just a new tool to add to your art supplies. And speaking about iPads, if you don't have Procreate, you can visit their website and see if your iPad is compatible with the program, but most iPads are. If you don't have an iPad, you can buy a refurbished iPad and an Apple Pencil. So you can use an iPad without an Apple Pencil, but when you're using Procreate, there's some features that you'll miss out on if you don't have an Apple Pencil. But both of these things can be purchased refurbished, and just check Procreate's website to see what the compatibility is. So I really hope you take the class. It's a lot of fun, and I love seeing the designs that everyone comes up with.
Thank you, Raquel. Okay, next we have Serita Westr. Serita is a craft-based artist and art educator of mixed Mexican descent living in Dallas, Texas. Rooted in weaving textiles and, bricolage. Am I saying that right? She'll correct me. Bricolage. Her sculptural basketry works are inspired by where she was born and raised, the Rio Grande Valley on the Texas-Mexican border. Through the use of mixed media and woven sculptural forms, her work explores themes of tension, movement, and containment, joined and permeable space, and the bicultural aesthetics of her home. Her artwork is exhibited nationally and is published in American Craft and the Surface Design Journal. Thanks for that, Serita.
Oh yeah, no problem. This is so fun to see all the workshops being offered, and thank you so much for having me. As an introduction, I'm from Texas. I'm from South Texas, and I grew up on a border town. So living there and having the privilege of being able to cross into my family's country of Mexico frequently, like in the 90s and early 2000s, really impacted a lot of the aesthetics that I'm curious about in my own personal work. I utilize sculptural basketry techniques and twining, and look to a lot of textures such as fencing, thinking about movement, considering the built environment of international checkpoints and cement, all of these things that for better or for worse have imprinted their aesthetics onto me. And so that's what the work really is inspired by. But apart from that, I just love building. I love that baskets are symbols for the vessel, symbols for the self. They are symbols of domesticity, but I just love using them to kind of reference the built environment, and play and materiality is like at the basis of what keeps me working and keeps me going. I wanted to share with y'all a little bit about the pieces that are on the presentation, but all of these are made from twined reed and then covered with mortar and cement. Pieces on the left utilize natural dye ink such as cochineal. to get vibrant color and express ideas of joy from where I'm from. And then pieces on the right utilize black and graphite to kind of reference, again, metal and fencing, and just really thinking about ideas of movement. And for the workshop, we're going to really be focusing on form. So we'll be doing intro to twining. You'll learn how to weave an open bottom basket, a closed bottom basket. We'll learn how to weave forwards and backwards. And that is so that we can explore weaving wedges into your work to create curves that are structurally a part of the forms. And this class, we're going to really focus on using reed. We'll briefly discuss different materials that you can explore in future works, but we'll really be focusing on building skills because it is a beginner level class. So I really hope that all levels feel excited to join in. I just love teaching and I bring a lot of energy to the class. I will make sure we have time for discussion, for sharing. And I'm just really looking forward to sharing this with you and seeing if it makes it into your creative life for the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Serita. Okay, can we have all of our presenters turn their cameras on now? We're going to get through some questions. If anyone has any questions for our presenters, there's a few in the chat that I'm going to get to, but go ahead and put them in the Q&A and we'll get to those. But a few that popped up, and Hannah has answered some, but I want to just make sure everybody gets the chance to see them. One of the questions came through while Natalia was talking, but it could be applicable for a few of you. The materials used for textiles, are they protected over time in some way, coated with a product? Are they functional? Would the finished product be preserved, cleaned? Someone asked Natalia about like washing the dryer sheets once they're done. Can they be functional? And I think that applies to the natural dye and pigment class as well. So I'll let Natalia answer the part of that applies to her. And then Hannah, if you could give your answer as well.
So dryer sheets are very, very sturdy. I have, of course, not here with me, but I have a ton of artwork that has been around for over 2 decades and there has no deterioration whatsoever. When you're painting it, especially with acrylic paint, it becomes sort of like a sealant, like a glue. And you can also use a matte medium as a sealant if you're really worried about it. But I have had no issues with any deterioration at all if it's hung in a home. I would not use a dryer sheet in a functional textile. I don't think that would feel all too great on your skin. But for any work that's hung on the wall, as long as it's treated just like any painting and is not in direct sunlight, it will be totally fine. The only deterioration I have ever seen with, actually never saw it with dryer sheets, but with plastic it's when it's exposed to the elements.
All right, thanks, Natalia. And Hannah, you have an answer to this for your workshop.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. There were a couple of questions that were directed towards me, so I thought that one was.
No, that's okay. I mean, they can apply to multiple people.
So the pigments can be used in functional pieces like bandanas or t-shirts or whatever. And but there is the difference between the mineral pigments and the pigments that are extracted from dyes. So the dyes will fade, but that's okay. That's part of the deal. But the mineral pigments seem to stand up pretty well, and they're extracted from basically clay or stone, and so they should be able to withstand sun. And I would say most of the work that I do with it is not meant to be functional. And so it's not really an issue. Like you put it on the wall behind glass or just as a piece and people don't touch it. So yeah.
All right, and then Victoria had an answer as it applies to her workshop on, usable and washable, cleanable.
Yeah, in my workshop, we'll be using electrical components, even though they're designed for working with soft materials and fabrics. In many cases, they aren't safe to wash, although not always. The materials that you'll get in the kit for my workshop won't be washable, but that doesn't mean that you can't come and sort of learn about the process and then in the future get washable materials. Conductive thread, sewable batteries, sewable lights, and other electrical components would be great for embellishing something that maybe won't be washed, even if it's wearable or potentially an artwork that can live on the wall or in a space, but again, not be washed.
Right. And two more questions, and they're mostly for Hannah, but I want to ask them here so they're on the recording. How does a dye become a pigment? Was one of the questions for Hannah.
So you add, I'm going to demonstrate this during my workshop, but you add a couple of different substances, alum and soda ash, and that solidifies the pigment. And then you can use it. You can either dry it or use it in its sort of liquidy state. Like you drain most of the water out and then it's like a pudding, like almost.
And then the other one was, do you use the earth pigments in your paper making process?
Yes, I do extensively. I'm not really going to talk about that so much in the workshop because it's a textile process, but I do teach that in person. It's really hard to do paper making over Zoom, I have found. So.
Okay, another question just came through for Victoria. Victoria, where do you find the electrical supplies? Do you include that information in your workshop materials?
Yeah, so for this workshop, if you sign up, you're going to get a little box from me that I will put in the mail for you that'll have everything that you need to cover the basics of soft electronics and soft circuitry. I will absolutely provide during the class a shopping list with plenty of suppliers so that if you're excited about this and you want to try and get other sorts of materials, you'll be prepared to do so. The fun thing about this is we can also find materials that are conductive out in the world. So while you will get a kit with conductive thread for weaving and sewing, if you've got some old costume jewelry that can hold a conductive charge, for example, or not a charge, but it can pass electricity through it, whether that's going to be copper, let's say, you could also consider playing around with that. There's lots of DIY opportunities. And I did notice there was a question about its use with plastics. So these components will sometimes warm up a little bit because of the electricity that comes through. So you would want to be careful about how close you're placing them near something plastic in the event that it might melt it a little bit. Generally, the sewable lights that we're working with use such a low voltage that that's not really going to be a big problem. But if you get into this practice and you want to include other components like sensors, or you want to include microcontrollers so you can make things move, eventually you'd have to be careful, although it's not totally prohibitive to work with plastics and other melty stuff.
A question for Serita: can plastic shopping bags be used in the workshop?
So in the workshop, we'll focus mostly using reed because it's a strong and flexible material. And after creating a couple of samples, y'all are welcome to play and experiment with some softer materials like fabric and plastic bags, perhaps in the weft. But I really want to keep with the reed so that we can really explore form and shape.
And yeah, I'm finding more questions in the comments, so I'm trying to get through those. They're a little more difficult for me to see. So I'll hop around here. This one's for Victoria. As someone who's never woven before, can they take your class?
Sure, you're absolutely welcome to join us. I think what I would likely do is recommend that you maybe watch basics of tapestry hand loom weaving just to catch up maybe, and I can absolutely share some links that I recommend for that. I believe the SDA will provide us with a list of the registered participants ahead of time, so I could share such a link with everyone who is signed up. There's just such little time to be covering such a large topic that I'll probably brush over the basics of weaving, but I think it's great if you've never done it and you just want to give it a try. We won't be doing super complex weaving because we'll be focusing on the circuitry. And then I think the same goes for, from the opposite point of view with electronics. You don't have to have any sort of experience to join us. I'm not an electrical engineer by any means, but I've learned about this through wanting to apply it to textiles. And I sometimes think about how I may have become an engineer if this was how I learned about it in school. It's just been a really great way for me to learn about technology through sewing it, for example.
Literally same. I may have become a chemist if I had learned it via textiles and art making. So I resonate with that. We have a question for Raquel. Is an Apple Pencil necessary, or will a generic stylus work with Procreate?
Yeah, so you can use a stylist with Procreate, but there's certain functions that Procreate has made specifically for the Apple Pencil. So you can absolutely join the class, use your stylist. However, I do recommend that later on you do get an Apple Pencil, and you can purchase it refurbished. You can do that, it'll work totally fine.
All right, thanks for that. And I have a few questions that seem a little complicated for more like, can we send supplies to Canada? So we might want to answer that at some other time to make sure. The classes are not scheduled at the same time, so people can sign up for more than one workshop. And I don't know if they'll be offered again, but so those are the little housekeeping answers I have there. Do you guys have any questions for one another? I know Natalia got hers in because she's trying to take the weaving class and weave with plastic.
I have a hard time choosing. I could take, I want to take every workshop.
Yeah, they seem really cool.
I want to do Hannah's workshop.
Yeah.
Is everybody getting a kit of the pigments? Is that how it's gonna work?
No, well, no, it's I have like places that I have bought them, and I want people to be able to pick out the colors that they want. So yeah. I already enrolled in yours.
Full swap.
I have a question for Raquel. I love your patterns so much, and I'm just curious, like, how do you what's the process for you to creating a pattern from like inspiration to like the final? Is that too complicated? Do I need to take the workshop?
No, I'm happy that you asked, because it'll get students thinking about what to bring to the class. So I basically, the last collection that I showed, the collection that's actually on the presentation, was me sitting down with my sketchbook on my couch, telling myself, you don't need to make something perfect. Let yourself just, whatever goes down on the page, just stick with it. Don't turn the page, don't start something new, just accept whatever comes out. And that's exactly what I did. And so the flower motifs came out on that page that you saw. And then I separated the different motifs and I remixed them and added different design elements to create more patterns within that collection. So yeah, so I'm happy that this came up, because I don't, we as artists, we kind of sometimes prevent ourselves from making work because we want everything to be perfect. And so I like welcoming my students like with the work that they have as they are, so that they can create more work. And yeah.
And one person's wondering, and she didn't catch it at the beginning, are beginners welcome in your class?
Yes, absolutely. So the way I teach is I have pre-recorded classes. So I will pre-record the instruction so that you have that to practice with. So we go over everything together. There's an opportunity for you to ask questions. There's an opportunity for you to share together. And then you take those recordings and you practice with them at your own pace. So by creating these patterns, you will learn multiple functions in Procreate in the application. So a beginner can totally join the class and walk through it.
Oh, can I continue with that question? So I would be able to just use doodles from my sketchbook.
Yeah,
Would I have to scan them in somehow first, or take a picture of them?
Yeah, so we cover that in class as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey,
Thank you.
One takes all the classes and then makes one thing that combines all the skills.
Yeah.
Right?
Mega sculpture.
That's the final exam at the end of taking all these courses together. I have a question for Serita. Serita, I love the shapes in your work, and they remind me of the fencing and the concrete, and I totally get that. But they also remind me a lot of jewelry in the body. Is the body an inspiration in how you're choosing shapes or making shapes? You're on mute still. Sorry.
In some of them, yes, I imagine them like walking through them, or imagine like if I could fly through them, or if I was really small and I could travel through the tunnels, or walk on the lines. So that's kind of the fantasy world that I'm thinking about when I'm making them. Yeah.
They're really cool. How do you sort of determine how to display them once they're made? Because looking at the work, the display really ties it all together in a beautiful way.
A lot of the works are displayed on a line of some kind, because I'm thinking a lot about the line of the border. And so frequently they're displayed on a dowel rod, and it's balancing, the works are balancing on that line. And personally, for me, it's thinking about the balancing of identities, as well as like just the political strain along it in that area. And some of the works are hung on lines that are almost like a clothesline, and so it can show the weight of that object. I noticed a question in the chat, and it was if I use a loom to weave the forms, and I do not. I actually started as a floor loom weaver, and I became so intrigued by working with mixed media and sculpture. And I was like, I'm ditching that loom because it's expensive. And what I love about basketry is it's very portable and easy to transport. I love to work inside, but I also love working outside and weaving outside. So basically just weaving the reed, cutting it down into sticks, and then like creating control out of the chaos to create these forms. So it's all woven by hand. And I hope that for students who want to take the class, that's something that's really exciting and liberating for them to think about how portable it is.
Yeah. And there's something about natural pigments in yours too. You said you use natural pigments. How is that applied?
On the pink pieces, I explore using layers of spray paints, and then I use cochineal inks and apply the ink on top of the surface. And so the ink is made out of the cochineal bug that eats the prickly pear cactus, and you can find the insect here in Texas along the border, but of course mostly known in Oaxaca and used in Zapotec natural dye practices. And so I feel like a connection to this insect and to the color, and that's how that color is applied to the surface. And in the class, we'll mostly focus on form and shape, and we'll just briefly cover like different types of materials you can apply on top, because basketry is awesome for like encaustics or using basketry as an armature for other surfaces to be applied on top.
Yeah. Victoria, I'm always interested at the intersection of science and art, and I'm wondering, what was the moment for you in your weaving where you realized you needed or you had to start working with electronics, or was that always a part of the process for you?
In the span of my practice as an artist, the electronics came in later, so that hasn't always been a part of my practice, but I believe I came into it through just curiosity, wanting to learn more. I was making these larger scale installations and thinking about ways that I could maybe get them to move or be kinetic or have their surfaces change. So it just was an inevitable rabbit hole that will never end at this point. I'm a sample maker. I love learning stuff and taking classes and meeting other artists and exchanging skills, and sort of like a junkie for swatch books. I bet there's a lot of people that identify with that in this Zoom today. So I think that's just what got me started. I love trying new things and iterating on them. And technology has just opened electronics in particular has opened a whole new world of tinkering and watchmaking for me.
And Hannah, you mentioned you have this background in agriculture. Is that what's peeping in with these natural pigments showing up in your work? Does that influence your art?
Well, yeah, I mean, so that was the first like half of my career, I guess, was working in agriculture, and it's so hands-on, that and it was so much about like the materials in a different way than in art. But I think of it as like as if my career was a whole. It just like it changed from being about like producing food to art about I went back to school 9 years ago, but I started taking my art more seriously probably 12 years ago. And so it was sort of like I transitioned back from my bachelor's degree is in art. But then I went into agriculture after that. And I really I was motivated by wanting to work with my hands and also wanting to do something that would help people and the planet, because I was working on organic farms. And that still is a part of my ethos. Like I don't necessarily have anything against non-natural materials, but for me, it's very important to me that my work can someday return back to the earth. And yeah, so I hope that answers your question. It's a little like, I could talk about it for a long time, but it's, it definitely is involved.
Yeah, we got one last question I'm going to try to get in before we wrap up here. It's for Raquel. In regard to using Procreate, what would you think the application for this design program would be? Textile design, inspiration for personal development of own art. They're just really interested if you brainstormed on this perchance.
Yeah, so for this particular class, I'm going to be teaching everyone how to design repeating pattern blocks that you can use on print-on-demand sites like Spoonflower and print directly on fabric. So what you make, you can, and that's exactly how I created the bandanas that you saw in the presentation, was right from my iPad. I created a file that I sent off to print-on-demand companies that will print directly on fabric, which is fun. And you could also experiment with different materials. Some companies also print wallpaper and things like that, but that's the direct application.
Well, thank you all so much. That was a wonderful conversation. I've learned a lot.
Devana, I'm sorry if I just saw a question in the chat. Somebody
Okay.
wanted to know if they can use wipes, baby wipes or disinfectant wipes instead of dryer
Okay.
sheets.
Yeah.
And I say, yes, you can, but they will not have the translucency that a dryer sheet would have. And make sure you wash them beforehand as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Natalia. Sorry, I missed that one. Okay, well, thank you guys all so much. Remember to check out the workshop details on the SDA website. There's also an email address beneath the workshops to ask like technical questions about the workshop and registration. Thank you to all of our sponsors. This recording will be available on YouTube next week and on the SDA website. Textile Talks are brought to you free of charge. If you enjoy these weekly Textile Talks, please consider making a donation to our Textile Talk program. Next Wednesday, Textile Talk hosts Allison Allen, Censorship versus Artistic Expression, sponsored by the Studio Art Quilt Associates. Thank you all so much and join us next week.